Hello, my good friends. How are you today? May God bless you all. I will not introduce anything. You guys watch the video and feel it. Then let's evaluate together. The safe house smelled of damp wood and neglect. A forgotten shack on the edge of Atlanta's sprawl where the city's hum faded to a distant murmur. Moonlight sliced through the tattered curtains, painting slivers of silver across the cracked linoleum floor. Maya Jackson stood with her back to the wall, her breath shallow, her curls a wild halo under the dim glow. Across from her, Ethan Carter loomed, his gray eyes locked on her like she was the only thing tethering him to the world. His dark sweater clung to his frame, damp from the rain they'd run through to get here, and the air between them crackled with something dangerous. Anger, want, maybe both. "You think you can just waltz back and fix everything?" Maya's voice was low, sharp, cutting through the silence. Her hands balled into fists, nails digging into her palms to keep her grounded. She wanted to scream, to shove him, but her body betrayed her, humming with the memory of his touch from days ago when she'd mistaken him for her brother and thrown her arms around him. That mistake had started this mess, and now here they were, hiding from Victor Hargrove's goons, with her little brother Miles fighting for his life in a hospital bed. Ethan stepped closer, closing the gap until she could smell the cedar and spice of his cologne, feel the heat radiating off him. "I'm not trying to fix everything, Maya," he said, his voice a rough whisper that sent a shiver down her spine. "I'm trying to keep you alive. Hargrove's men are out there, and they're not playing games." Her laugh was bitter, scraping her throat. "And I'm supposed to trust you? After you dropped 10 grand like it was nothing and left me to deal with the cops? You're a Carter, Ethan. Your name's poison to me." His jaw tightened, a flicker of something, guilt maybe, crossing his face. He reached out, his fingers brushing her arm, and she froze, caught in the electricity of that touch. The room felt smaller, the air thicker, like it was pressing them together. "You don't know me," he said, stepping closer still, his chest inches from hers. "Not yet. But you feel this, don't you?" Maya's heart thudded, a traitor that wanted to lean into him, to let go of the weight she'd carried for years. Miles's illness, Jamal's demons, the ghost of Mama D's kitchen. Ethan's hand slid up her arm, slow, deliberate, his thumb grazing the curve of her shoulder. Her breath hitched, and for a second she saw it. His lips on hers, her hands in his hair, the world falling away until it was just them, skin to skin. No lies, no past. She wanted it, God help her, wanted to know what it felt like to be consumed by him. "Ethan," she murmured, her voice breaking, and that was all it took. He closed the distance, his lips crashing into hers, hungry and fierce. She kissed him back, hard, her hands fisting in his sweater, pulling him closer. His body pressed against hers, solid, warm, the kind of anchor she'd never had. His hands roamed, one tangling in her curls, the other slipping to her waist, fingers digging into her skin like he was afraid she'd vanish. The kiss deepened, a clash of tongues and teeth, and she felt herself unraveling, her anger melting into something raw, something that scared her. But Miles's face flashed in her mind, pale, small, hooked to machines, and she jerked back, gasping, her hands pushing against Ethan's chest. "No," she said, voice trembling. "Miles needs me. I can't do this." Ethan's eyes were dark, his breath ragged, but he nodded, stepping back, giving her space she didn't want, but needed. "I know," he said softly, his voice heavy with something unspoken. "But this isn't over, Maya. Not by a long shot." She turned away, pressing her palms to her eyes, trying to shove down the heat still coursing through her. Outside, the rain pounded, a relentless drum that matched her pulse. She didn't trust him, couldn't trust him, not after everything. But that kiss, It lingered, a promise or a threat. She couldn't tell which. 3 days earlier, the Atlanta police precinct had been a different kind of hell. The interrogation room reeked of burnt coffee and bleach, the fluorescent lights buzzing like a swarm of pissed-off bees. Maya sat across from Detective Harris, a stocky man with a red face and a cheap suit that strained at the seams. His pen tapped the table, a rhythm that grated on her nerves, and his eyes bored into her like she was already guilty. "Let's try this again, Jackson," he said, leaning forward, his breath sour with stale cigarettes. "Ethan Carter wires $10,000 to Grady Memorial for your brother's surgery, and you expect me to believe you don't know where it came from? Carter Enterprises is neck-deep in a money laundering probe. That money's dirty, and you're tied to it." Maya's hands gripped the edge of the chair, her knuckles whitening. The room was cold, but sweat beaded on her neck, sticking her curls to her skin. She could still hear the hospital monitors beeping, Miles's shallow breaths, Jamal's voice cracking as he told her the surgery was underway. 10 grand had saved her brother, but now it was a noose around her neck. "I told you," she said, her voice steady despite the storm inside her. "Ethan paid for Miles's procedure. I didn't ask where it came from. I was too busy trying to keep my brother alive." Harris snorted, flipping through a file. "Right. And you just happened to hug a billionaire in the middle of the airport thinking he was your brother? Convenient story." Her cheeks burned at the memory. Ethan's solid frame under her arms, the woodsy scent that wasn't Jamal's cheap old spice, the way his lips had twitched when she realized her mistake. She'd bolted from that moment, but Ethan hadn't let it go, showing up at Brew and Fly, her coffee shop gig, with that damn smirk and eyes that saw too much. And then he'd paid for Miles, handed her the deed to Mama D's kitchen, the soul food joint Carter Enterprises had gutted a decade ago, savior or snake, she still didn't know. "I don't owe you my life story," she snapped, glaring at Harris. "I don't know anything about Carter Enterprises. Ask Ethan." "Oh, we would," Harris said, leaning back. "But he's in the wind. Left Atlanta right after you got that deed. Funny timing, don't you think?" Her stomach dropped. "Ethan? Gone?" After promising he'd be around, after that look in his eyes like he meant it? She shoved the thought down, focusing on Harris. "Then find him," she said. "I've got nothing to hide." Harris studied her, then sighed, tossing his pen down. "You're free to go for now. But don't leave town, Jackson. We're watching you." She stood, legs shaky, and walked out into the rain-soaked night, the precinct's neon sign buzzing behind her. West End was a blur of wet asphalt and flickering streetlights as she caught a bus home, her mind racing. Ethan had saved Miles, given her Mama D's, but now he was a ghost, and the cops thought she was in on some scheme. She needed answers, and she'd find him, even if it meant walking straight into trouble. The apartment above the laundromat was a shoebox of peeling paint and creaky floors, the kind of place that held onto every argument and broken dream. Maya kicked off her sneakers, the soles caked with mud, and sank onto the couch, the springs groaning under her. The air smelled of stale coffee and the faint bleach hum from downstairs, a reminder of the bills stacking up on the kitchen table. Rent, utilities, Miles's meds, every damn thing was a fight, and now this. Her phone buzzed, Tasha's name lighting up the screen. Her co-worker at Brew and Fly was all sharp wit and no nonsense, the kind of friend who'd call you out but have your back. Maya answered, rubbing her eyes. "Yeah? Girl, you okay?" Tasha's voice crackled, laced with worry. "Heard you got hauled in by the cops. What's good?" Maya sighed, leaning back, the couch's worn fabric rough against her skin. "Cops think I'm in bed with Ethan Carter, like I'm some mastermind. Miles is still in surgery, Jamal's losing it, and Ethan's MIA. Just another Tuesday." Tasha snorted. Ethan Carter, huh? That man's trouble wrapped in a pretty package. You sure you ain't falling for those gray eyes? Maya's mind flashed to the safe house, Ethan's lips on hers, the way her body had wanted to forget everything. She shoved it down hard. Hell no, she said, but it sounded weak even to her. I just need to find him, figure out what he's playing at. Tasha said, popping her gum. Well, you need backup, you holler, and watch yourself, Maya. Rich boys don't play fair. She hung up, and Maya stared at the ceiling, cracks spiderwebbing across it like her life. She needed a lead, someone who knew more than she did. That's when she remembered Caleb Monroe, the guy from high school who'd always been scribbling in a notebook, chasing stories nobody else cared about. Now a freelance reporter, he'd posted about Carter Enterprises on X a while back, digging into their shady deals. If anyone could help, it was him. The bar on Auburn Avenue was a dive, all sticky floors and neon beer signs that flickered like they were on their last legs. The air was thick with cigarette smoke and the tang of spilled whiskey. The jukebox belting out an old Outcast track that made Maya's chest ache for simpler days. She spotted Caleb at a corner booth, his lanky frame hunched over a laptop, his curls a mess under a faded Braves cap. He looked up as she approached, his brown eyes lighting up with a smile that was too warm for her current mood. Maya Jackson, he said, standing, his voice carrying that easy West End drawl. Been a minute. You look tired, she cut in, sliding into the booth, and pissed. I need your help, Caleb. He raised an eyebrow, leaning back, his flannel shirt stretching over shoulders that had filled out since high school. Heard you got tangled up with Ethan Carter. Cops giving you hell? She nodded, her fingers tracing the edge of the table, sticky with God knows what. They think I'm in on some money laundering scheme because Ethan paid for my brother's surgery. 10 grand, Caleb. I didn't ask questions, just took it to save Miles. Now Ethan's gone, and I'm the one in the crosshairs. Caleb's eyes softened, but there was something else there, a flicker of interest that wasn't just about the story. He leaned forward, his hand brushing hers, calloused fingers warm against her skin. You don't deserve this, Maya, he said, voice low. Carter Enterprises has been screwing over folks like us for years. I've been digging into Victor Hargrove, their big-shot partner. Guy's got a trail of dirty deals, including what happened to Mama D's. Her breath caught. Mama D's kitchen, her family's heart, torn down by Carter Enterprises a decade ago, leaving her mom, Ruth, a shell, and her brother Jamal on a path to trouble. You're saying Hargrove was behind it? She asked, her voice tight. Caleb nodded, pulling out his phone, scrolling to a grainy photo of a contract. Found this in some old city records. Hargrove's signatures all over the deal that forced your mom out. Ethan's dad was in on it too, but Hargrove's the one who played dirty. Maya's stomach twisted, the pieces clicking too fast. Ethan had sworn he wasn't like his family, had bought back Mama D's to make it right. But if Hargrove was the real villain, why had Ethan run? She met Caleb's gaze, his eyes steady, too damn steady, and for a moment she wanted to lean into that warmth, let him be the answer. His hand lingered on hers, and she didn't pull away, not right away. Caleb, she started, but her voice faltered as his thumb grazed her knuckles, a slow, deliberate touch that sent a spark through her. He was close now, close enough that she could smell the faint cedar of his aftershave, see the pulse in his neck. I'm here, Maya, he said, voice rough. Not like Carter, running when it gets tough. I know you, and I'm not going anywhere. Her throat tightened, Ethan's kiss burning in her memory, a contrast to Caleb's quiet strength. She wanted to believe him, wanted simple, but nothing in her life was ever that. She pulled her hand back, forcing a smile. I need the truth, Caleb, not promises. Can you help me find it? He nodded, a flicker of disappointment in his eyes, but he didn't push. Got your back, he said. Let's start with Hargrove. But watch yourself, Maya. Guys like Carter don't give without taking. Back at the apartment, Maya collapsed onto her bed, the springs creaking under her weight. The rain had stopped, leaving West End quiet except for the occasional bark of a dog down the block. She pulled a folder from her bag, the deed to Mama D's staring up at her in black ink, her name bold against the page. Tucked inside was a note she hadn't noticed before, Ethan's handwriting sharp and sure. I bought it back for you, not for guilt. Don't give up. Her chest tightened, a mix of anger and something softer she didn't want to name. Ethan was gone, maybe running from the cops, maybe from her, but that note felt like a challenge. She'd find him, drag the truth out of him, even if it meant facing Hargrove or worse. The cops, Caleb, Jamal, everyone was pulling her in different directions, but Mama D's was hers, and she wasn't letting anyone take it again. She closed her eyes, Ethan's face flashing in the dark, those gray eyes that saw too much, that kiss that had almost undone her. Trouble had a way of finding her, and Ethan Carter was the worst kind. But as sleep pulled her under, one thought lingered. She wasn't done with him yet. Hey, y'all. What's good? Maya's caught between Ethan's fire and Caleb's heart. Who's got her back, and who's playing her? Hit that subscribe button and drop a comment. Is Ethan a hero or a snake? Should Maya trust Caleb? Stick around to see where this wild ride goes next. The apartment smelled like burnt toast and desperation, the kind of stench that clung to the walls no matter how many windows Maya cracked open. She stood in the cramped kitchen, the linoleum cool under her bare feet, staring at a stack of bills on the counter. Rent, utilities, Miles's hospital fees, each one a punch to the gut. Outside, West End was waking up, the laundromat below humming its endless drone, a dog barking somewhere down the block. But inside, it was just her and Jamal, and the air between them was thick with words neither wanted to say. Jamal slouched on the couch, his Falcon's hoodie hanging loose on his frame, a fresh scar above his eyebrow catching the morning light. He'd been out of prison less than a week, but the weight of those 2 years was carved into his face, making him look older than 30. He sipped coffee from a chipped mug, his eyes narrowing as Maya tossed the Mama D's deed onto the coffee table, the paper landing with a soft thud. You gonna explain this? She asked, crossing her arms, her voice sharp enough to cut. Or you just gonna sit there like I'm the one keeping secrets? Jamal's jaw tightened, and he set the mug down, the ceramic clinking against the table. What's to explain, Maya? You're the one holding out. Ethan Carter hands you Mama D's and you don't tell me? Your own brother? Her laugh was dry, bitter, scraping her throat. Don't pull that card, Jamal. I didn't tell you because I'm still figuring out what it means. You think I trust him? After what his family did to us? She gestured at the deed, her hand trembling. Mama D's was ours, and they took it. Now he's back, throwing it at me like it fixes everything, and you're out there running with Darius of all people. Jamal stood, his height filling the room, his voice rising. Don't you dare bring D into this. I'm doing what I gotta do for Miles, for us. You think that coffee shop pays enough? You think Carter's money grows on trees? He jabbed a finger at the deed. You let that rich boy play you, Maya. He's got you wrapped around his finger, and you're too stubborn to see it. Her chest burned, anger and guilt twisting together. She stepped closer, her voice low, dangerous. You don't get to lecture me about stubborn, Jamal. You're out there with Darius, a guy who'd sell his own mama for $1. Miles needs us, not your dumbass schemes. You want to help? Stay clean. Don't make me lose you again. Jamal's eyes flashed, pain and defiance mixing, but before he could fire back, the door creaked open. Miles shuffled in, his small frame swallowed by an oversized hoodie, his face pale from the hospital stay. He froze, sensing the tension, his brown eyes darting between them. Y'all fighting again? He asked, voice small, and Maya's heart cracked. She forced a smile, crossing the room to ruffle his hair, his warmth grounding her. "Nah, little man," she said, kneeling to meet his gaze. "Just talking loud. How you feeling?" "Okay," he mumbled. But his wince as he sat on the couch told her otherwise. The dialysis was working, but the doctors had warned it was a band-aid, not a fix. She glanced at Jamal, their argument hanging unspoken, and he looked away, jaw tight. "Go grab some cereal," she said to Miles, watching him shuffle to the kitchen. When she turned back to Jamal, her voice was steel. "We're not done. You want to be here for him. Prove it. No more Darius, no more risks." Jamal didn't answer, just grabbed his jacket and stormed out, the door slamming behind him. Maya sank onto the couch, her head in her hands, the weight of it all pressing down. Miles needed her. Jamal was slipping, and Ethan, wherever he was a shadow she couldn't shake. She needed answers, and sitting here wasn't getting her any. The Georgia World Congress Center glittered like a damn jewel box, all glass and steel, a far cry from West End's cracked sidewalks and flickering signs. Maya felt out of place in her black jeans and faded red top, weaving through a crowd of suits and sequins at some charity gala she'd only gotten into because Caleb had a press pass. The air was thick with perfume and privilege, chandeliers casting a golden glow over tables draped in white linen. She scanned the room, her pulse quickening, searching for Ethan. Caleb had said he might be here, chasing leads on Hargrove, and she wasn't leaving without confronting him. Her eyes landed on him across the room, and her breath caught. Ethan stood by a bar, his dark jacket tailored to perfection, his hair catching the light like polished mahogany. But he wasn't alone. A woman leaned close, her hand resting on his arm, her blonde hair cascading over a dress that hugged every curve like it was painted on. She was all sharp cheekbones and confidence, her laugh cutting through the chatter, and the way Ethan tilted his head toward her made Maya's stomach twist. Caleb appeared at her side, his flannel swapped for a blazer that didn't quite fit, his curls tamed for once. He followed her gaze, his voice low. "That's Lauren Hargrove," he said, handing her a glass of cheap wine. "Victor's daughter, Carter Enterprises' legal shark. She and Ethan go way back. Too far, if you ask me." Maya's grip tightened on the glass, the wine sloshing. "What's that supposed to mean?" Caleb shrugged, but his eyes were sharp, watching her reaction. They were a thing, years ago, power couple vibes. Word is, she's still got a leash on him, or wants one. Maya forced a laugh, but it came out brittle. "Good for her. I'm not here to play jealous girlfriend. I need to know what Ethan's hiding." "Uh-huh," Caleb said, a smirk tugging at his lips. "Keep telling yourself that, Maya." She ignored him, weaving through the crowd, her eyes locked on Ethan. Lauren spotted her first, her gaze sliding over Maya like she was sizing up a stray dog. She leaned closer to Ethan, her voice carrying just enough to sting. "Is that your little project from West End?" "How quaint." Ethan turned, his eyes finding Maya's, and for a moment, the room faded. The chatter, the clink of glasses, Lauren's smirk. His expression softened, a flicker of relief, but then Lauren's hand tightened on his arm, and he stiffened, caught between them. "Maya," he said, stepping forward, his voice low, urgent. "What are you doing here?" "Looking for you," she snapped, her voice louder than she meant, drawing glances. "You drop a bomb on my life, 10 grand, Mama D's, then vanish? Cops think I'm in on your mess, Ethan. You owe me answers." Lauren laughed, a sharp, crystalline sound. "Oh, sweetheart, Ethan doesn't owe anyone anything, least of all you." She stepped closer, her perfume cloying, her eyes cold. "He's a Carter. You're... what? A barista with a sob story? Stick to your lane." Maya's fists clenched, her nails biting into her palms. My lane's wherever I damn well please, she said, stepping into Lauren's space, her voice steady despite the fire in her chest. And if you think you scare me, you're dumber than that dress looks. Lauren's smile faltered, but Ethan moved between them, his hand grazing Maya's arm, a touch that sent a jolt through her. Enough, he said, his voice firm, but his eyes were on Maya, searching. Lauren, back off. Maya, let's talk. Outside. She wanted to shove him, to tell him to go to hell, but the weight of his gaze held her, and she nodded, letting him lead her through a side door to a balcony overlooking the city. The night air was cool, Atlanta's skyline a mosaic of lights against the dark, but all she could feel was the heat of his hand still lingering on her skin. The balcony was quiet, the gala's hum muffled behind glass. Ethan leaned against the railing, his jacket open, his tie loosened like he was shedding a skin he didn't want. Maya stood a few feet away, arms crossed, her heart pounding too loud in her ears. The city sprawled below, a reminder of how small her world was. West End's corner stores and cracked pavement against this glittering machine. Start talking, she said, her voice cutting through the silence. Why'd you run? Why am I the one answering for your money? Ethan turned, his eyes catching the city lights, gray and stormy. I didn't run, he said, stepping closer, his voice low, rough. I'm trying to take down Hargrove. Victor, not Lauren. He's the one who made that 10 grand look dirty to trap you, to trap me. I'm gathering proof, Maya, but it's not safe for you to be near me right now. She laughed, sharp and hollow. Safe? I got cops breathing down my neck. My brother's out there with some thug and Miles. Her voice broke, and she hated it. Hated the way Ethan's face softened, like he cared. Miles is all I've got, and your money saved him, but now it's screwing me over. You don't get to play hero and ghost me. He stepped closer, too close, the space between them shrinking, until she could smell that damn cologne again, cedar and spice, could see the pulse in his neck. I'm not playing anything, he said, his voice dropping, a rumble that hit her low in the gut. I gave you Mama D's because it was yours, because I saw you that day in the airport, running at me like you'd fight the world for someone you love. I wanted you to have that fire back. Her breath hitched, and she hated how his words landed, how they stirred something she didn't want to feel. The neon glow from a nearby sign bathed them in red, catching the planes of his face, and for a second she remembered the safe house, his lips on hers, the way she'd almost let go. He reached out, his fingers brushing her wrist, slow, deliberate, and her skin burned under his touch, a traitor to her better sense. Ethan, she said, her voice barely a whisper, and he froze, his hand still on her, his eyes locked on hers. The air was heavy, charged, and she felt it. The pull to close the gap, to taste him again, to let herself want something for once. His thumb grazed her pulse and she shivered, caught in the moment, the city fading to nothing. But Lauren's voice cut through, sharp and cold from the doorway. Really, Ethan? Slumming it on a balcony now? Maya jerked back, her face burning, and Ethan's hand dropped, his expression hardening as he turned to Lauren. Go back inside, he said, voice flat, but Lauren just smirked, sauntering closer, her heels clicking on the concrete. Poor thing, Lauren said, eyeing Maya like she was a bug. You actually think he's yours? Ethan's got a type, darling, and it's not this. She gestured at Maya, her diamond bracelet glinting. Maya's blood boiled, but she forced a smile, stepping forward. Keep talking, princess. Maybe one day you'll say something worth hearing. Lauren's eyes narrowed, but Ethan grabbed Maya's arm, pulling her back. We're done here, he said, his voice low, urgent. Maya, meet me tomorrow. Mama D's, midnight. I'll explain everything. She yanked free, glaring at him, at Lauren, at the whole damn mess. You better, she said, turning for the door, her heart pounding, her body still humming from his touch. She didn't look back, but she felt his eyes on her, and Lauren's laugh followed her like a ghost. Back in West End, the streets were dark, the air heavy with the promise of more rain. Maya caught a bus, her mind a tangle of Ethan's words, Lauren's smirk, and Jamal's anger. She needed more than promises. She needed proof, something to clear her name, to keep Miles safe. Caleb was her best shot, but his touch at the bar lingered, a contrast to Ethan's fire, and she hated how it confused her. At the apartment, she found a note from Jamal. Gone to handle business. Don't worry. Her stomach sank. Darius's business, no doubt. She pulled out the Mama D's folder, flipping through it, and froze. Tucked between the pages was a small journal, her mom's handwriting looping across the cover. Ruth's recipes and ramblings. She opened it, her breath catching at the first line. He tried to save us, but they were too strong. Carter's shadow is long. Her hands shook, the words blurring. Ruth had loved someone tied to Carter Enterprises, someone who'd fought for Mama D's and lost. Was it Ethan's father? Someone else? The questions piled up, each one heavier than the last, but one thing was clear. Ethan wasn't the only ghost haunting her past, and Hargrove was at the center of it all. She grabbed her phone, texting Caleb, "Need you to dig deeper on Hargrove. Something's off." Then she sat back, the journal in her lap, Ethan's face flashing in her mind, those eyes, that touch, the way he'd promised answers. Tomorrow at Mama D's, she'd get them, or she'd burn his world down trying. The air in Caleb Monroe's apartment was thick with the scent of old books and coffee grounds, a cluttered cave of papers and half-empty mugs that screamed freelance reporter. Maya sat cross-legged on the hardwood floor, her back against a sagging couch, her fingers smudged with ink from flipping through a stack of city records Caleb had dug up. The glow of a single lamp cast shadows across the room, turning the chaos into something almost cozy. But her nerves were anything but settled. Outside, West End was quiet, the occasional car horn or shout cutting through the night, a reminder of the world she was trying to hold together. Caleb crouched beside her, his flannel shirt rolled to the elbows, his curls falling into his eyes as he pointed to a faded document. "See this?" he said, his voice low, excited. Hargrove's name's on every shady land deal in Atlanta from the early 2000s, including the one that screwed over Mama D's. He didn't just buy your mom out. He made sure she had no choice. Maya's stomach twisted, her mom's journal burning a hole in her memory. Ruth's words, "He tried to save us, but they were too strong," had kept her up half the night, looping like a bad song. She leaned closer, her shoulder brushing Caleb's, and caught the faint cedar of his aftershave, a grounding contrast to the storm in her head. "So Hargrove's the one who pulled the strings," she said, her voice tight. "Not just Ethan's dad?" Caleb nodded, his eyes meeting hers, steady and warm. "Ethan's dad was a figurehead, Maya. Hargrove's the one with the real dirt. I'm betting he's still pulling strings now, with that money-laundering mess the cops are sniffing around." She exhaled, rubbing her temples, the weight of it all pressing down. Miles was stable, but the hospital bills were a ticking bomb. Jamal was out there with Darius, playing with fire, and Ethan, God, Ethan, was a question mark she couldn't erase. That balcony last night, his fingers on her wrist, the way her body had wanted to close the distance despite Lauren Hargrove's venom. It was all too much. And now this. Proof that Victor Hargrove had gutted her family's dream, maybe more. Caleb's hand brushed hers, a slow, deliberate touch that snapped her back to the room. His fingers lingered, calloused and warm, and she froze, her pulse kicking up. "You okay?" he asked, his voice softer now, his eyes searching hers. He was close, too close, the lamp catching the gold flecks in his brown irises, and for a second, she wanted to lean into that warmth, let it anchor her. "I'm fine," she lied, but her voice came out husky, betraying her. His thumb grazed her knuckles, a spark that traveled up her arm, and the room felt smaller, the air heavier. She could smell the coffee on his breath, see the pulse in his neck, and it hit her. How easy it would be to let go, to kiss him, to forget Ethan's fire and the mess waiting outside these walls. "Caleb," she started, but he leaned closer, his hand sliding to her wrist, his touch firm but gentle. "You're carrying too much, Maya," he murmured, his breath warm against her cheek. "Let me help. Not just with this," he gestured at the papers, "but with you." Her heart thudded, Ethan's face flashing in her mind. Those gray eyes, that balcony, the way he'd looked at her like she was everything. But Caleb was here, real, his body a solid promise of something safe, something she understood. She tilted her head, their lips inches apart, and for a moment she wanted it, wanted to know what it felt like to choose simple, to choose him. His hand cupped her cheek, his thumb brushing her lip, and she shivered, caught in the pull. But Miles's laugh echoed in her head, small and fragile, and she pulled back, gasping, her hands pushing against Caleb's chest. "I can't," she said, voice trembling. "Not now. I'm sorry." Caleb's eyes darkened, a flicker of hurt, but he nodded, dropping his hands. "I get it," he said, voice rough. "But I'm not going anywhere, Maya. When you're ready, I'm here." She stood, her legs shaky, and grabbed her jacket, needing air, needing space. "I need to check something," she muttered, avoiding his gaze. "Keep digging, okay? I'll call you." He didn't stop her, but his eyes followed her to the door, and she felt them long after she stepped into the cool night, West End streets swallowing her up. Mama D's kitchen stood like a ghost in the moonlight, its boarded windows staring back at Maya like empty eyes. The neon sign was dark, but she could still see it in her mind, red and buzzing, spelling out her family's name in better days. She'd come here after Caleb's, needing to think, needing to feel something solid. The key Ethan had given her was heavy in her pocket, a reminder of his promise, his shadow. She unlocked the padlock, the door creaking as she stepped inside, the air thick with dust and memory. The place was a shell, bare walls, a cracked counter, a few tables stacked in the corner. But it held her past. She could almost hear Ruth's voice over the fryer, Jamal sneaking fries, Miles giggling in a high chair. She ran her hand along the counter, dust coating her fingers, and her throat burned. This was hers again, but at what cost? Her phone buzzed, Tasha's name lighting up. "Girl, where you at?" Tasha's voice was sharp, worried. "Jamal's been asking for you and he don't look good. Said something about Darius and a job going south." Maya's stomach dropped. "I'm at Mama D's," she said, already moving for the door. "Where's he at?" "Some bar on Campbellton. I'm heading there now. Meet me." She hung up, her heart racing, and was halfway out when a shadow moved in the doorway. She froze, her hand tightening on the key, but then Ethan stepped into the moonlight, his jacket open, his face etched with exhaustion. "Maya," he said, voice low, urgent. "We need to talk." Her pulse spiked, anger and want crashing together. "You don't get to just show up," she snapped, stepping back, her voice echoing in the empty space. "Not after last night, not after Lauren." "What the hell are you doing here?" He crossed the threshold, the neon glow from a passing car catching his eyes, turning them silver. "I told you I'd explain," he said, closing the door behind him, the click loud in the silence. "Hargrove's coming for you, Maya. He knows you're digging, and he's not playing. I'm trying to stop him, but I need you to trust me." She laughed, sharp and bitter, and, "Trust you? After you let me twist in the wind with the cops? After Lauren was all over you like she owns you?" She stepped closer, her finger jabbing his chest. "You're a Carter, Ethan. Your family took everything from mine, and now you're what? My savior?" His hand caught hers, holding it against his chest, and she froze, feeling his heartbeat under her palm, steady and strong. The air shifted, the dust swirling in the moonlight, and he leaned closer, his voice a rumble. "I'm not them," he said, his eyes locked on hers, fierce and raw. "I bought this place back because it was yours. Because I saw you, Maya. Really saw you. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm asking for a chance." Her breath hitched, his warmth seeping into her, and for a second, she wanted to believe him, wanted to bridge the gap between them. The neon light painted them in red, catching the planes of his face, and she remembered the balcony, his touch, the way her body had betrayed her. His thumb brushed her wrist, a slow, deliberate caress, and she shivered, caught in the pull of him, the space between them shrinking to nothing. "Ethan," she whispered, and his eyes darkened, his hand sliding to her waist, pulling her closer. She felt the heat of him, the strength of his grip, and her body responded, wanting to melt into him, to forget the world. But Lauren's laugh echoed in her mind, and she stepped back, breaking the spell, her voice hard. "No, you don't get to do this. Not until I know the truth." He nodded, his jaw tight, but his eyes didn't leave hers. "Midnight tomorrow," he said. "Here, I'll bring what I have on Hargrove. But stay away from him, Maya. He's dangerous." She didn't answer, just turned for the door, her heart pounding, his presence lingering like smoke. The bar on Campbellton Road was a dive, all flickering neon and sticky tables, the air heavy with beer and regret. Maya found Tasha by the pool tables, her braids piled high, her eyes scanning the crowd. "He's in the back," Tasha said, nodding toward a dark corner. "With Darius." "Looks bad, Maya." Her stomach knotted, and she pushed through the crowd, the jukebox's bass thumping in her chest. Jamal sat slumped in a booth, his face bruised, his eyes glassy. Darius leaned across from him, all lean muscle and menace, his humtro glinting under the dim light. He looked up as Maya approached, his smile slow, predatory. "Well, damn," Darius said, leaning back, his voice smooth. "Maya Jackson, in the flesh. You here to save your brother or just grace us with that fire?" "Shut up, D," she snapped, sliding into the booth beside Jamal, her hand on his arm. "What happened?" Jamal didn't meet her eyes, his voice low. "Job went south. D's crew got jumped and He stopped, rubbing his face. "I messed up, Maya." Darius chuckled, his eyes on her, too sharp, too knowing. "He'll be fine, long as he pays up. But you, Maya." He leaned forward, his voice dropping. "I could help you out. Money, protection, whatever you need." His gaze slid over her, lingering, and she felt a chill mixed with something else, something dangerous. She stood, pulling Jamal up, her voice cold. "We don't need your help. Stay away from him, Darius." He just smirked, watching her go, and she felt his eyes on her back as she dragged Jamal out, Tasha following close. Outside, the air was damp, the streetlights buzzing, and Jamal leaned against a wall, his breath ragged. "I'm sorry," he muttered, and she wanted to scream, to shake him, but she just hugged him, his warmth reminding her why she fought. "Get home," she said, voice breaking. "We'll figure it out." Back at Mama D's, Maya couldn't sleep, the journal open in her lap. She'd gone back after dropping Jamal off, needing the quiet, needing answers. The pages were filled with Ruth's recipes: cornbread, collards, peach cobbler. But between them were stories, fragments of a life Maya barely knew. One entry stopped her cold. "He came tonight, said he'd fight for us. Carter's shadow is long, but he's trying. Hargrove knows, and I'm scared." Her hands shook, the pieces falling into place. Ruth's lover wasn't just anyone. He'd been tied to Carter Enterprises, maybe Ethan's father, maybe someone else. But he'd fought Hargrove and lost. She needed more, needed to know what Ethan knew. She texted Caleb, "Found something. Meet me tomorrow, early. Mama D's." But it was Ethan's face she saw as she drifted off, his voice in her ear. "I'm not them." And she hated how much she wanted it to be true. The next morning, Maya met Caleb at a diner near Mama D's, the kind of place that smelled like grease and second chances. He slid into the booth across from her, his eyes tired but sharp, a notebook tucked under his arm. "Got something," he said, pulling out a folder. "Talked to Loretta Hayes, old cook at Mama D's. She remembers your mom's deal." Maya leaned forward, her coffee forgotten. "And?" "Loretta says Hargrove didn't just buy Ruth out. He threatened her, said he'd ruin you kids if she didn't sell cheap. But here's the kicker. Someone at Carter Enterprises tried to stop it. A lawyer, Thomas Reed. He disappeared after the deal went through." Her breath caught, Ruth's journal flashing in her mind. Thomas Reed. Could he be the one? "Disappeared how?" she asked, voice tight. Caleb shrugged, but his eyes were grim. "Nobody knows. But Loretta's sure Hargrove had him silenced. If we find proof, Maya, we can nail him." She nodded, her mind racing. Ethan had said he was after Hargrove, but was he covering for his own family? Or was he telling the truth? The diner's chatter faded, and she saw Caleb watching her, his hand inches from hers on the table. "We're close," he said, voice low. "You and me. We can do this. You don't need Carter." She wanted to agree, to lean into his certainty, but Ethan's touch lingered, a ghost she couldn't shake. "I know," she said, but it felt like a lie. That afternoon, Maya stood outside Mama D's, the sun high, the street buzzing with kids on bikes and corner store chatter. She'd started cleaning the place, Tasha and a few neighbors pitching in, sweeping dust, stacking chairs. It wasn't much, but it was a start, a spark of what could be. Then Lauren Hargrove pulled up in a sleek black car, her heels clicking as she stepped out, her eyes hidden behind sunglasses. "Miss Jackson," Lauren said, her voice dripping honey and venom. "You're persistent, I'll give you that. But this?" She gestured at the restaurant. "It's a liability. My father's filing to reclaim it. Improper transfer, you understand?" Maya's blood ran hot, and she stepped forward, Tasha at her side, arms crossed. "You don't scare me," Maya said, voice steady. "This is mine, and you're not taking it." Lauren smiled, cold and sharp. "We'll see. Ethan can't save you, darling. He's got his own problems." She turned, pausing to add, "Stay out of our way, or you'll regret it." As Lauren drove off, Maya's phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "Give up the papers, or the kid pays." Her heart stopped. Miles. She called the hospital, her hands shaking, and the nurse's voice was calm but grim. "He's fine, but someone was here, asking questions." She sank to the curb, Tasha's hand on her shoulder, and the world spun. Hargrove wasn't just coming for her. He was coming for everything she loved. The warehouse on Atlanta's south side was a skeleton of rust and shadow, its corrugated walls groaning under the weight of a storm rolling in from the west. Maya stood at the edge of the lot, gravel crunching under her sneakers, her heart hammering like it wanted to break free. The air was heavy with the tang of oil and decay, and the distant hum of I-85 was the only sign the city hadn't swallowed them whole. Somewhere inside that hulking ruin, Miles was being held, her little brother, barely 12, caught in a game she hadn't meant to play. Ethan was beside her, his jacket slung over one shoulder, his gray eyes scanning the warehouse like a predator. Caleb crouched a few feet away, checking a map on his phone, his jaw tight under the brim of his cap. The three of them were a fragile alliance, bound by necessity but fraying at the edges. Maya's phone burned in her pocket. Hargrove's text seared into her mind. Give up the papers, or the kid pays. The contract from Mama D's, the one tying Hargrove to a decade of dirty deals, was her only leverage, and now it was a noose around Miles's neck. We go in quiet, Ethan said, his voice low, cutting through the wind. 2 entrances, north and west. Caleb, you take the west, check for guards. Maya, you're with me. She glared at him, her curls whipping in the breeze. Don't tell me what to do, Ethan. This is my brother. I'm not your sidekick. His eyes softened, but his voice stayed firm. I know, but Hargrove's men aren't amateurs. We mess this up, Miles doesn't walk out. Caleb stood, pocketing his phone, his gaze flicking between them. She's right, he said, voice clipped. Maya calls the shots. I'm not here to play hero either. Ethan's jaw twitched, but he nodded, stepping back. Maya took a breath, steadying herself, the weight of their eyes pressing down. She didn't trust either of them fully. Not Ethan with his Carter baggage, not Caleb with his Crusader streak. But Miles needed her, and she'd walk through fire to get him back. Fine, she said, voice hard. Caleb, west entrance. Ethan, north with me. We find Miles, get him out. No cowboy shit. Hargrove wants the papers, he'll have to come through me. Caleb nodded, his hand brushing hers as he passed, a fleeting touch that carried too much. Be careful, Maya, he said, voice low, and then he was gone, disappearing into the shadows. Ethan watched him go, then turned to her, his expression unreadable. You ready? She didn't answer, just headed for the warehouse, her sneakers silent on the gravel, her heart a drumbeat in her chest. Inside, the warehouse was a maze of crates and rusted machinery, the air thick with dust that stung Maya's throat. Dim fluorescents flickered overhead, casting jagged pools of light across the concrete floor. She moved low, Ethan at her side, his steps measured, his body a coiled spring. The place smelled like a grave, mold and metal, with a faint whiff of cigarette smoke that set her nerves on edge. They slipped behind a stack of pallets, the wood splintered and damp, and Maya peered around the edge, her eyes straining in the dark. Footsteps echoed somewhere ahead, heavy and deliberate, and her stomach knotted. Hargrove's men, maybe Darius's crew, she didn't know who was worse. Ethan's hand grazed her arm, a silent signal to wait, and she froze, his touch sending a jolt through her despite the fear clawing her chest. He leaned close, his breath warm against her ear, his voice barely a whisper. 2 guys 20 yards up, armed. We need to circle around. She nodded, her pulse racing, and not just from the danger. His nearness was a distraction. His cedar scent, the heat of his body inches from hers, the memory of that kiss in the safe house that had almost undone her. She shoved it down, focusing on Miles, on the contract tucked in her jacket. They moved together, silent, threading through the maze until they reached a rusted stairwell leading to a catwalk above. Halfway up, a shout cut through the dark, and Maya's heart stopped. Carter! A voice barked, rough and familiar. Darius. She spun, spotting him below, his Zumtro glinting as he aimed a gun their way. Beside him was Jamal, his face bruised, his eyes wide with panic. Jamal? Maya's voice broke, her hands gripping the railing. What the hell? I'm sorry, Maya, he said, voice cracking. Darius said it was the only way to— Shut it, Darius snapped, his gun steady. You and your boyfriend thought you could sneak in? Hargrove's got eyes everywhere, and your brother here sold you out. Maya's blood ran cold, betrayal slicing through her like a blade. Jamal had told Darius, her own brother, after everything, had put Miles in more danger. She stepped forward, ignoring Ethan's warning hand, her voice raw. You chose money over Miles? Over me? You're supposed to be my family, Jamal. Jamal's face crumpled, but Darius laughed, a low, ugly sound. Family don't pay debts, Maya. Hand over the papers, or the kid's done. Ethan moved in front of her, his voice calm but deadly. You're not touching her, or the kid. Let's talk, Darius. Hargrove's not worth dying for. Darius's eyes narrowed, but before he could answer, a crash echoed from the west side. Caleb, maybe, tripping a trap. Gunfire erupted, sharp and deafening, and Maya ducked, Ethan pulling her behind a crate as bullets pinged off metal. Her heart raced, her hands shaking, but she clung to one thought. Miles. We have to move, she hissed, shoving Ethan's arm away. They're distracted. Find Miles. He nodded, his eyes locked on hers, and for a second she saw something. Fear. Not for himself, but for her. It hit her hard, but she pushed past it, crawling through the shadows, the gunfire fading to sporadic pops. They reached a locked door at the back, the steel cold under her hands, and Ethan pulled a knife, working the lock with a precision that made her wonder what else he was hiding. The door swung open, revealing a small room lit by a single bulb. Miles sat tied to a chair, his face pale, his eyes wide with terror. Maya! He cried, and she ran to him, her hands fumbling with the ropes, tears burning her eyes. I'm here, little man, she said, voice breaking. You're okay? I got you. Ethan stood guard, his knife glinting, but the gunfire outside grew louder, closer. We're out of time, he said, voice tight. Caleb's pinned down. We need to go, now. She freed Miles, pulling him into her arms, his small body trembling against hers. But as they turned for the door, Darius appeared, his gun aimed at Ethan's chest. Going somewhere? He sneered, and Maya's heart stopped, her grip tightening on Miles. You don't want this, she said, stepping forward, her voice steady despite the fear clawing her. Hargrove's using you, Darius. Let us go, and I'll give you the papers. Darius's eyes flicked to her, a slow smile spreading. You always were fire, Maya, but I don't trust you. He cocked the gun, and time slowed, her breath catching as she braced for the shot. But Ethan moved faster, tackling Darius, the gun skidding across the floor. They grappled, fists flying, and Maya shoved Miles behind her, her eyes darting for the weapon. She lunged, her fingers closing around the cold metal, but a hand grabbed her ankle. Jamal, his face twisted with guilt. Don't, he said, voice hoarse. I messed up, Maya, but don't make it worse. She kicked free, standing, the gun heavy in her hands. You did this, she said, voice shaking. You put him in danger. How could you? Jamal didn't answer, his eyes dropping, and she turned away, her focus on Ethan and Darius, still fighting. Ethan landed a punch, sending Darius staggering, but more footsteps echoed. Hargrove's men closing in. We're trapped, Maya said, her voice barely audible, Miles clinging to her side. Ethan stood, blood trickling from a cut on his lip, his eyes meeting hers. Not yet, he said, but his voice was grim, and she knew they were running out of options. In the chaos, a narrow corridor offered a chance, but it was a gamble. Dark, tight, a dead end if they were wrong. Maya led Miles, Ethan behind her, the gunfire fading, but the shouts growing closer. The corridor was a tomb, all damp concrete and flickering lights, the air thick with mold that made her cough. Her sneakers slipped on the slick floor, and Miles's hand trembled in hers, his breathing shallow. They ducked into an alcove, a rusted machine offering cover, and Maya pressed Miles against the wall, her body shielding his. Ethan crouched beside her, his shoulder brushing hers, his breath ragged. The shouts were closer now, boots pounding, and her heart raced, fear and fury twisting together. "We're not dying here," she whispered, more to herself than him, but Ethan's hand found hers, his fingers lacing through, warm and steady. "You're not," he said, voice low, fierce. "I promise." She turned, their faces inches apart, and the world shrank to this, the dim light catching his bloodied lip, the heat of his hand, the way his eyes held hers, like she was all that mattered. Her breath caught, and for a second, she forgot the danger, forgot Jamal's betrayal, forgot everything but him. His thumb brushed her palm, a slow, deliberate touch that sent fire through her, and she leaned closer, her lips parting, wanting to close the gap, to taste him again, to feel something other than fear. His hand slid to her neck, his fingers tangling in her curls, and she felt his pulse under her fingertips, fast and alive. "Maya," he murmured, his voice a rumble that hit her low, and she tilted her head, their lips brushing, a spark that promised more. A shout snapped her back, boots too close, and she pulled away, gasping, her hand tightening on the gun. Ethan's eyes were dark, regret flickering, but he nodded, turning to face the corridor, knife ready. "Stay with Miles," he said, voice hard, and slipped into the shadows, leaving her with her brother and a heart that wouldn't slow down. They waited, the seconds stretching like hours, the alcove a fragile sanctuary. Miles's breathing was shallow, his small hand clutching her jacket, and she whispered to him, nonsense words to keep him calm. But her mind was on Ethan, on Caleb, on Jamal. Where were they? Had Caleb gotten out? Was Ethan still alive? A new sound broke the silence. A low buzz. Her phone. She pulled it out, her hands shaking, and saw a text from Caleb. "I fucked up. Sent the proof to a reporter. Hargrove knows. Get out." Her blood ran cold, betrayal hitting her again, sharper this time. Caleb, with his ideals and promises, had gone behind her back, risking everything. She wanted to scream, but Miles needed her, and she shoved the phone away, her focus on the gun, on the footsteps closing in. The alcove wouldn't hold. She stood, pulling Miles up, her voice low. "We're moving, little man. Stay close." He nodded, eyes wide, and they slipped into the corridor, the gun heavy in her hand. But as they rounded a corner, a figure loomed. Victor Hargrove himself, flanked by two men, his suit pristine against the warehouse's decay. His smile was cold, predatory, his eyes locking on her like she was prey. "Miss Jackson," he said, voice smooth as poison. "You've been busy. Give me the papers, and your brother walks. Refuse, and he doesn't." Miles whimpered, and Maya stepped in front of him, the gun raised, her hands steady despite the fear clawing her chest. "You touch him, you're dead," she said, voice hard. "I've got the contract, Hargrove, and it's enough to bury you. Let us go, or it goes public." Hargrove laughed, a low, ugly sound. "You're out of your depth, girl. No one's coming for you. Not Carter, not your reporter friend. Hand it over, or I take it from you." Her finger tightened on the trigger, her mind racing. Ethan was out there, maybe hurt, maybe worse. Caleb had betrayed her. Jamal had broken her trust, and Miles was all she had left. The warehouse closed in, the lights flickering, and she stood at the edge, No way out. No one to save her but herself. The warehouse was a cage of flickering shadows, the single bulb overhead swinging like a pendulum, casting Victor Hargrove's face in sharp relief. His suit was pristine, a stark contrast to the grime around them, his smile cold as the concrete under Maya Jackson's feet. She stood in front of Miles, her little brother's trembling hand clutching her jacket, the gun in her grip heavy but steady. Hargrove's men flanked him, their eyes glinting like wolves, and the air was thick with the stench of oil and menace. "You're out of moves, Miss Jackson," Hargrove said, his voice smooth, almost amused. "Give me the contract, and the boy lives. Keep playing hero and you both end here." Maya's pulse roared in her ears, her gaze locked on Hargrove, every instinct screaming to pull the trigger. The contract, proof of his dirty deals buried in her jacket, was her only card, and Miles's life hung on it. Ethan was somewhere in the shadows, maybe bleeding, maybe dead. Caleb had sold her out, sending proof to a reporter and blowing their plan. Jamal, her own brother, had led Hargrove's men right to her. She was alone, cornered, and the weight of it crushed her chest. "Maya," Miles whispered, his voice small, and she tightened her grip on him, shielding his body with hers. His warmth was the only thing keeping her from breaking, from letting the fear win. "You don't scare me," she said to Hargrove, her voice hard despite the shake in her hands. "This contract buries you. Every deal you stole, every family you ruined. You kill us, it goes public. I've got people waiting to send it." Hargrove's smile didn't waver, but his eyes narrowed, a crack in his armor. "Bluffing's a dangerous game," he said, stepping closer, his polished shoes clicking on the concrete. "No one's coming for you. Not your billionaire, not your reporter, not even your brother." Her stomach twisted, Jamal's betrayal a fresh wound, but she held her ground, the gun unwavering. "Then why are you sweating?" she shot back, nodding at the bead of perspiration on his temple. "You know I'm not lying. Let Miles go and we talk. Otherwise you're done." One of his men shifted, hand on his gun, but Hargrove raised a hand, stopping him. The silence stretched, taut as a wire, and Maya's mind raced. She'd sent a text to Tasha before entering the warehouse, a desperate SOS with their location, but there was no guarantee it had gone through, no guarantee anyone was coming. She was stalling, buying seconds, praying for a miracle. Then it came, a crash from the far end of the warehouse, metal clanging like a dropped wrench. Hargrove's head snapped toward the sound, and Maya seized the moment, shoving Miles behind a crate and diving for cover. Gunfire erupted, sharp and chaotic, bullets ricocheting off steel. She crouched low, her arm around Miles, her heart pounding as she scanned the dark for Ethan, for Caleb, for anyone. "Maya!" Ethan's voice cut through the noise, rough and urgent, and she spotted him across the room, blood streaking his face, his knife flashing as he tackled one of Hargrove's men. Caleb was with him, his cap gone, his face grim as he fired a stolen gun at another guard. They'd come back, despite everything, and relief crashed over her, tangled with fear. "Stay down," she hissed to Miles, pushing him deeper into the shadows. She gripped the gun, her hands slick with sweat, and peeked out, spotting Hargrove retreating toward a side door, his men covering him. He wasn't getting away, not after this, not after Mama D's, not after Miles. She stood, aiming at his back, but Ethan was faster, sprinting across the warehouse, his body a blur. He tackled Hargrove, pinning him to the ground, his fist slamming into the older man's jaw. "You're done!" Ethan growled, blood dripping from a cut on his cheek, his eyes wild with fury. Maya ran toward them, Miles at her side, but a guard lunged from the side, his gun raised. She fired without thinking, the recoil jarring her arm, and the man dropped, clutching his leg. Her stomach lurched. She'd never shot anyone before, but she kept moving, her focus on Hargrove, on ending this. Caleb reached them, panting, his shirt torn. "Cops are coming," he said, voice hoarse. "Tasha got through. We've got minutes." Maya nodded, her eyes on Ethan, still holding Hargrove down. But then Hargrove laughed, a low, chilling sound that froze her. "You think this ends with me?" he said, spitting blood. "Carter Enterprises runs deeper than you know, girl. You're holding a match, but the fire's already lit." She knelt beside him, the contract in her hand, her voice cold. "Then I'll burn it all down," she said, shoving the papers in his face. "Starting with you." Sirens wailed in the distance, red and blue lights flashing through the warehouse's broken windows, and Hargrove's smile faded, his eyes darkening with defeat. Ethan stood, pulling Maya up, his hand lingering on her arm, his touch a lifeline in the chaos. "You okay?" he asked, voice rough, his eyes searching hers. Blood matted his hair, but he was alive, and she nodded, her throat too tight to speak. "Miles," she managed, turning to her brother, who clung to her, his face buried in her jacket. She held him close, tears burning her eyes, relief flooding her veins. He was safe for now. Caleb watched them, his expression unreadable, and she felt a pang. His betrayal, sending the proof to a reporter, had nearly cost them everything. She'd deal with him later. For now, she focused on Ethan, on Hargrove, on the cops storming in, their shouts filling the air. The hospital room was a sterile cocoon, all white walls and antiseptic sting, the monitors beeping a steady rhythm that anchored Maya to reality. Miles lay in the bed, his small frame dwarfed by the sheets, his breathing even now, the crisis past. The doctors had stabilized him, internal bleeding from the stress, they'd said, but he'd pull through. She sat beside him, her hand on his, her body aching from the warehouse, from everything. Ethan stood by the window, his jacket gone, his shirt stained with blood and dirt. He'd been patched up, a cut on his cheek, a bruised rib, but he hadn't left, hadn't run, and that meant something, even if she wasn't ready to admit it. Caleb was in the hall, talking to a cop, his voice low, and she knew she'd have to face him soon, face what he'd done. She looked at Ethan, his silhouette sharp against the city lights, and her chest tightened. "You didn't have to come back," she said, voice low, not wanting to wake Miles. "You could have left me there." He turned, his gray eyes catching the fluorescent glow, soft but fierce. "Never," he said, stepping closer, his voice a rumble that hit her deep. "I told you, Maya, I'm not them. I'm not my family." Her throat burned, Ruth's journal flashing in her mind, the words she'd read last night after the warehouse, when she'd gone back to Mama D's to breathe. He was Thomas Reed, not a Carter, but he loved me. He fought Hargrove, and they took him. Thomas Reed, the lawyer Loretta had mentioned, the one who'd tried to save Mama D's and vanished. Not Ethan's father, but a man who'd worked for Carter Enterprises, who'd loved her mom and lost everything. She stood, crossing to Ethan, her hands shaking. "I found something," she said, pulling the journal from her bag, her voice barely steady. "My mom. She loved someone named Thomas Reed. He wasn't a Carter, but he was part of your world. He tried to stop Hargrove, and they killed him, didn't they?" Ethan's face changed, shock flickering, then recognition. "Reed," he said, voice low like a prayer. "I knew his name, heard it in old files. My dad mentioned him once. A lawyer who got too close to the truth. Hargrove made him disappear." Her breath caught, the pieces clicking, a truth she hadn't expected. Ethan hadn't known, hadn't lied, and the weight of it hit her. His fight wasn't just for her, but for a past he was unraveling too. She stepped closer, her hand brushing his, and the air shifted, charged with something heavier than before. "You're really doing this?" she said, voice soft, searching his eyes. "Taking him down. For you," he said, his hand covering hers, warm and sure. "For Reed. For everyone Hargrove hurt. I'm not running, Maya." Her heart pounded, his touch grounding her, and for a moment she let herself feel it, the possibility of him, of trust, of something more. His thumb traced her knuckles, a slow, deliberate caress, and she leaned closer, her lips parting, wanting to bridge the gap, to let him in. His breath was warm, his eyes locked on hers, and she felt the pull, the need to. Miles stirred, a small groan breaking the spell, and she pulled back, her face burning. Ethan's hand dropped, but his eyes didn't leave hers, a promise unspoken. "Go," she said, nodding at the door. "I need to be here, but tomorrow, Mama D's, we finish this." He nodded, his lips twitching into a half-smile. "Tomorrow," he said and left, the door clicking shut behind him. Caleb was waiting in the hall, his cap back on, his hands shoved in his pockets. He looked up as Maya stepped out, his brown eyes shadowed, guilty. "Maya," he started, voice rough, but she held up a hand, stopping him. "You sent the proof to someone else," she said, voice low, sharp. "You almost got us killed, Caleb. Miles, Ethan, me, because you couldn't wait." He flinched, rubbing his neck. "I thought I was helping," he said, voice cracking. "I thought if it went public, Hargrove couldn't touch you. I messed up, Maya, but I did it for you." She laughed, bitter and tired. "For me? Or for your story? I trusted you, Caleb, and you broke that." His eyes searched hers, desperate, and he stepped closer, his hand reaching for hers. "I'm sorry," he said, voice low. "You're more than a story, Maya. You're everything. Let me make it right." She pulled back, her heart heavy, Ethan's touch still lingering, a contrast to Caleb's warmth. "You're my friend," she said, voice softening but firm. "But that's all, Caleb. I don't feel what you want me to." His face fell, but he nodded, stepping back. "I'll keep digging," he said, voice quiet. "For you, for Miles. No strings." She watched him go, the hall empty now, and leaned against the wall, her body sagging. Betrayal stung, but Miles was safe, and that was enough, for now. Back at Mama D's, dawn was breaking, the sky a bruise of purple and gold over West End. Maya sat on the counter, the journal open, Ruth's words a lifeline. Tasha had come by, bringing coffee and a fierce hug, her voice steady as she'd said, "You did it, girl. Miles is good, and this place is yours. Now what?" Now what? Maya traced a recipe for cornbread, her mom's handwriting looping like a melody, and found a letter tucked in the back, one she'd missed before. "Maya, if you're reading this, I'm gone. But you're stronger than I ever was. Thomas tried to save us, but love wasn't enough. Keep fighting, baby. For Miles, for Jamal, for you." Tears fell, silent and hot, and she let them, let the grief and love wash over her. Ruth had broken, but she'd loved them, and this place, Mama D's, was her legacy, Maya's to reclaim. She wiped her face, resolve hardening, and stood, the key in her pocket a weight she was ready to carry. Hargrove was in custody, but his words haunted her. "Carter Enterprises runs deeper than you know." Ethan was fighting, Caleb was searching, and she was here holding the pieces. Tomorrow she'd meet Ethan, rebuild Mama D's, and face whatever came next. For Ruth, for Miles, for herself. The sun dipped low over West End, painting the sky in streaks of orange and pink, a canvas that felt like a promise after weeks of storms. Mama D's kitchen stood proud under its new neon sign, the red letters buzzing to life for the first time in a decade, casting a warm glow over the cracked sidewalk. Inside, the air was alive with the sizzle of frying chicken, the sweet tang of peach cobbler, and the hum of voices, neighbors, friends, strangers turned family by the pull of a shared dream. Maya Jackson stood at the center of it all, her apron dusted with flour, her curls pulled back, her heart so full it might burst. The place was packed, tables crammed with folks laughing over plates of collards and cornbread, kids darting between chairs, music spilling from a jukebox Tasha had scavenged from some flea market. The walls, once bare, now held photos. Ruth flipping burgers, Jamal as a kid with a gap-toothed grin, Miles giggling over a milkshake. Maya had spent weeks scrubbing, painting, rebuilding, her hands calloused, but her spirit unbroken. This wasn't just a restaurant. It was a heartbeat, West End's pulse, and she'd brought it back. She moved through the crowd, refilling sweet tea, trading banter, her smile easy but fierce. Miles was at a corner table, his color better, his laugh brighter than it had been in months. The doctors said he was stable, maybe even a candidate for a transplant down the line, and every day he smiled was a victory. Jamal was behind the counter, his sleeves rolled up, his face focused as he plated orders, a quiet redemption in every move. He'd sworn off Darius, promised to stay clean, and though trust was a slow rebuild, Maya saw the brother she'd always loved in his eyes tonight. "Yo, Maya!" Tasha called from the bar, her braids swinging as she waved a pitcher of lemonade. "You gonna work or just stand there looking pretty?" Maya laughed, grabbing a tray. "Keep talking, Tash. I'll make you scrub dishes." "Girl, I'm management now," Tasha shot back, winking. "You the boss, but I'm the vibe." The crowd chuckled, and Maya shook her head, weaving toward a table where Loretta Hayes sat, her gray hair braided tight, her eyes sharp with pride. The old cook had been here since dawn, teaching Maya Ruth's recipes, her hands steady as she'd shown her how to season the greens just right. "You did good, child," Loretta said, her voice warm, weathered. "Your mama's smiling tonight." Maya's throat tightened, Ruth's letter flashing in her mind. "Keep fighting, baby. For Miles, for Jamal, for you." She nodded, squeezing Loretta's hand. "Couldn't have done it without you," she said, voice soft, and meant it. But even in the warmth, a shadow lingered. Victor Hargrove was behind bars, his empire crumbling under the contract Maya had turned over to the cops, backed by Caleb's research and Ethan's evidence. The papers had exposed a decade of land grabs, Mama D's just one of many, and West End was buzzing with talk of justice, of taking back what was theirs. Yet Hargrove's words in the warehouse, "Carter Enterprises runs deeper than you know," gnawed at her, a splinter she couldn't pull out. And Ethan, always Ethan, was a question she hadn't answered, his face a ghost in every quiet moment. She glanced at the door, half expecting him, but it was just another neighbor coming in, the bell jingling. She shook it off, focusing on the now, on the life she'd carved out of ash. The night wore on, the crowd thinning as plates emptied and stories stretched long. Maya was wiping down a table, the rag damp in her hand, when Jamal caught her eye, nodding toward the back. "Got a second?" he asked, voice low, and she followed him to the kitchen, the clatter of dishes fading behind them. The kitchen was warm, all stainless steel and spice, the air thick with the ghost of Ruth's cooking. Jamal leaned against the counter, his hands shoved in his pockets, his face softer than she'd seen in years. "I owe you," he said, voice rough. "For Miles, for this place, for not giving up on me." Her chest ached, the memory of his betrayal in the warehouse still raw, but she saw the truth in his eyes. Regret, resolve, love. "You're here now," she said, stepping closer, her voice steady. "That's what matters. But you slip again, Jamal. and I'm done chasing you." He nodded, his jaw tight. "I know. I'm trying, Maya. For real this time." She hugged him, his arms strong around her, and for a moment they were kids again, sneaking fries under Ruth's nose, dreaming of a world that didn't hurt. "We got this," she whispered, and he nodded, pulling back, his smile small but real. As he returned to the front, Maya stayed, her hands tracing the counter, Ruth's presence everywhere, in the scuff marks, the recipe cards taped to the wall, the love baked into every surface. She pulled out the letter again, reading it by the light of a flickering bulb, the words a bomb. "You're stronger than I ever was." She folded it carefully, tucking it into her pocket, and made a promise to keep fighting, to make this place more than a memory. The bell jingled, and Maya looked up, her heart skipping as Ethan walked in. He was different tonight. No jacket, just a dark sweater that hugged his frame, his hair mussed, his gray eyes catching the neon glow like they held secrets. The room faded, the chatter a distant hum, and she felt it again. That pull, the fire that hadn't died since the safe house, since the warehouse, since every damn time he looked at her. He crossed the room, stopping at the counter, his presence filling the space. "Place looks good," he said, voice low, a smile tugging at his lips. "You did it, Maya." Her throat tightened, pride and something else mixing, something she wasn't ready to name. "We did it," she said, nodding at the crowd, at Miles laughing with Tasha, at Jamal working the grill. "But you didn't have to come. You're supposed to be halfway across the country by now." He leaned closer, his elbows on the counter, his voice dropping. "Couldn't leave without seeing this. Without seeing you." Her breath caught, his words landing like a spark, and she felt the heat of him, the memory of his hands, his lips, the way he'd fought for her in that warehouse. She wanted to push him away, to keep it simple, but her body leaned in, drawn to him like gravity. The neon light painted them red, catching the stubble on his jaw, the intensity in his eyes, and she wondered what it would be like to let go, to choose him, to burn. "Ethan," she started, but he shook his head, his hand brushing hers, a touch that sent a shiver through her. "You don't owe me anything," he said, voice rough, honest. "I did what I did because it was right, because you're worth it. But I'm leaving, Maya. Carter Enterprises is a mess, and I need to clean it up from the outside. This," he gestured at the restaurant, "this is yours. Keep it burning." Her heart twisted, a mix of relief and loss, and she nodded, her voice soft. "You're not what I expected, Carter." He smiled, real and raw, and stood, his hand lingering on hers a moment longer. "You're more than I deserved," he said, and walked out, the bell jingling, leaving her with a warmth she couldn't shake. Caleb was next, showing up as the last customers left, his cap pulled low, his notebook tucked under his arm. He stood by the door, hesitant, and Maya waved him in, her heart heavy but clear. They sat at a table, the jukebox playing low, and she looked at him, seeing the boy from high school, the man who'd fought beside her, the friend who'd stumbled. "I'm sorry," he said, voice quiet, his eyes on the table. "For the warehouse, for pushing too hard. I thought I was doing right, but I hurt you, and I'll carry that." She reached across, squeezing his hand, her voice steady. "You're my friend, Caleb. Always will be. But I don't love you like that, and I need you to be okay with it." He nodded, his smile small, pained. "I'm trying," he said. "I'll keep digging, keep the heat on Hargrove's people, for you, for West End." She smiled, letting go, and watched him leave, the door swinging shut, a chapter closing but not ending. Alone now, Maya locked up, the neon sign still buzzing, its light spilling across the street. She stood outside, the air cool, West End alive with distant music, kids laughing, life pushing forward. Miles was upstairs, asleep in the apartment they'd moved into above the restaurant. Jamal watching over him. Tasha had gone home promising to open tomorrow, and Loretta's words echoed, "Your mama's smiling tonight." She pulled out her phone, checking for messages, and froze. An email. No sender, just a single line. Hargrove was a pawn. Carter Enterprises hides a bigger lie. "Are you ready, Maya?" Her pulse quickened, Hargrove's warning ringing true. The fire's already lit. Ethan was out there chasing his own truth, and she knew their paths would cross again, whether she wanted it or not. But tonight, she was here. Mama D's alive under her hands, her family whole, her heart, hers. She'd fought for this, bled for it, and no shadow, no Carter, no Hargrove would take it away. She slipped the key into her pocket, her smile fierce, and turned off the sign, the neon fading to black. "Hey, y'all. Maya's got Mama D's back, but that email's got us shook. What's Carter Enterprises hiding? Hit that subscribe button and drop a comment. Should she chase Ethan, stick with Caleb, or keep fighting solo? Stick around for the next chapter. This fire's just getting started."